Hello and welcome to another edition of the Hooligan Report. I'm your host as always, SM, and with me this time I have Bojan.
Hi guys.
And I've also got Thomas9.
Hey guys, what's doing?
We'll start with your side, Thomas, because we had a bit of an interesting result for them against Liverpool. Funnily enough, 6 years to the day, I think, or 6 years roughly since the 8-2 loss to United and kind of getting done over again by another big side. Obviously, the thread on the board that Cruyff started a couple of years back is back up at top, and everyone's sort of contributing to this discussion about Arsenal's failings. What have you made of it, and in particular this game?
Yeah, look, back when the 8-2 happened, I was probably still in that naive stage where I was defending the manager at all costs because I just love Arsene Wenger. But I think the difference between then and now is just I think that Liverpool definitely could have done as much damage as Man United did that day. We probably got off lightly on the 4-0. It was absolutely appalling. I don't think I've seen Arsenal play that poorly.
No shots on target.
Yeah, no shots on target at all. Liverpool absolutely ran us ragged. The positioning offensively by Xhaka and Ramsey, they were far too forward and leaving space open for the likes of Salah and Mane just to do whatever the hell they want. It was an absolute joke, and it just got me thinking like is Wenger blind? Is he trying to screw us up? Has he got some vendetta against Arsenal that we don't know about? It's just self-destructive, and I'm just starting to think that it's cruel to Arsenal fans. I'm just an Australian Arsenal fan that's been following since the Invincibles like a bandwagon. But what about all these fans over in the UK that it's their livelihood? They just live for football. They live for Arsenal. Supporters like Claude and Bully and those guys are obsessed with Arsenal. They spend 80%. Well, Claude said a few years ago in an interview he spends 80% of his disposable income on going to watch Arsenal. He just doesn't have much at all to spare, and he's been continuously let down. And he has mental health issues, as I think a lot of us know. He definitely takes it to heart, Claude. That's someone I'm really worried about. But yeah, I feel terrible about it. But I just can't imagine how much this damage is what kind of damage this is doing on those more into it fans. The real diehards, the true diehards over there. And it's just unfair at this stage.
It's crazy because, Wenger in an interview said, he sort of hesitated before putting pen to paper on a new contract, and you wonder, maybe he should have done more than hesitating when the supporters were just out for blood last season, and it's just been more of the same to start this season. Bojan, we sort of saw recently, I don't know if you saw, there was a tweet posted in the Arsenal thread talking about all of their outgoings next summer who are all basically going to leave for free in the form of Ozil and Sanchez being the main two. And the amount of money that's sort of expected that they would have to outlay to replace them. And it's pretty frightening to think that it could actually get a lot worse for Arsenal.
Mate, I was the one that posted that tweet. So
there
you go. Well, yeah, I don't really see any direction from Arsenal, and I think the loss to Liverpool, that was already set in stone before the game. As soon as you saw the team sheets, when you spend 50 odd million on a star striker and you don't play him, that's questionable. When your defence is already a bit ropey and you've got a pretty solid season pro, they just brought across from Schalke and Kolasinac, and he's not playing, and they're moving Bellerin to left wing back, and Oxlade-Chamberlain playing against the team that he's about to join. In my opinion, as soon as I saw that team sheet, I knew they were going to lose. I didn't realise how badly they were going to lose, and they just don't seem to have any direction, leaving players until they get down to the last 18 months of the contract before starting to renew them. There's lots of theories going around here that maybe there's some youth players that are going to play. We saw Iwobi coming onto the scene a few years ago, but he's kind of drifted away a bit. They got Reece Nelson and Chris Willett coming through, but Chris Willett's just been loaned to Benfica. So I don't really see what the plan is from Arsenal. Even when teams make kind of what appears on the outside to be strange decisions, there's usually some kind of logic behind it. But I really, I've got quite a few good mates who are Arsenal fans over here, and they're pretty despondent at the moment, and I don't blame them because I can only see them drifting further and further down the table over the next few seasons.
And it's a bit of a strange one because speaking from my perspective with Hull is you see our owners sort of cutting off their nose to spite the face in terms of transfer business and not spending any money, and looking at it from the outside and saying, I just don't understand the logic there because you're actually costing yourself money by not investing properly last season in a Premier League squad to keep us up, as an example. And then you're seeing the same sort of thing happening at Arsenal where I think it was Shuey or someone posted a list of transfers that they could have brought in the form of Mane, Van Dijk, and a couple of other players like that, where over the past few seasons, before Mane went to Liverpool, etc., that Arsenal could have brought into the club to strengthen the team, to improve the squad, which they haven't done because they've not wanted to spend the money, and it leaves them in this ridiculous position. Thomas, I mean...
I do have...
Sorry?
So just quickly, I do have one kind of theory about this and Arsenal not spending money. You go back a few years ago and you really needed top four to bring in the large sums of money. Now pretty much just for playing in the Prem, everyone gets between 130, 150 million pounds a season. Maybe Kroenke and the other Arsenal owners are happy with that sum and they think that they don't have to spend far too much to get in that top four. Maybe that's it. Maybe they think it's easier just to, remain mid-table, let's say 10th to 6th, and collect the 150 million plus every year, and that's enough for them.
Do you reckon, Thomas, that would be... I mean, it's surprising if that was going to be the case, that Wenger's happy to sort of accept that he's not getting the players in that he wants. And it almost seems as if there's that direction coming from both sides, both the owners and the manager, that they're not trying to push the boat out too far with funds and buying players, and they're kind of happy to settle for that mediocrity, I guess.
Of course, yeah, you can look at it that way, and I don't know if Stan Kroenke actually said this, but he may have implied that Leicester City were able to win the league 2 seasons ago on a very limited budget, just playing that really good counter-attacking football, but I'm not sure if that's true. But one thing that really gets to me was, I think it was Ivan Gazidis, he said, in an AST meeting, or maybe just to a fan or something like that, just as a passing comment, that finishing 5th, missing out in the Champions League qualification would be a big wake-up call, and we could expect a lot of expenditure coming in over the summer, and it looks great. Like, we were right off the bat with Kolasinac, and then the rumours of Mbappe, but I don't think anyone really believed that, and then Lacazette, and it looks like things were really going to turn around at least. Like, everyone was still sceptical of the manager's abilities, of course, but it really did look like we were willing to start, smashing the dollars out to the other teams to try and get players in, and rectify this lull we've been in over the past few seasons. But it just stopped. There was just complete stagnation in the transfer window. Similar to the stagnation that's hindered Arsenal since probably 2005, since we won that FA Cup against United.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I don't know how much worse it can get for Arsenal before it gets better. But we might switch gears and talk about a more positive off-season and a more positive start to the season in the form of United, Bojan. And good win against Leicester a fortnight ago, essentially, and still no goals conceded. Just off to a flying start.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I mean, the key difference between this season and last season, so far at least, is that the lower to middle ranked teams were actually beating quite well. Whereas last year, like the West Hams of the world and Leicester, those were the games we were bloody drawing, or if not losing. And we've got another one coming up this weekend in Stoke, and lots of people were talking about Lukaku, he doesn't score in the big games, but that's not where we need him to score based on our results last year. If we'd beaten a lot of the minnows, then we would have been a lot more competitive for the league. So it's been that sort of things has been great. Bailey continues to improve at centre half, and the defence looks really tight. And I question the signing of Nemanja Matic, but geez, he's been superb, and he's really freed up Pogba, and we're actually seeing the Pogba now, which is justifies his price tag from last year. I think it's been fantastic.
Thomas, what have you made of United's start to the season, and do you see them sort of going on with it and being a real title contender?
Absolutely. They've been tremendous so far. As Bojan mentioned, Pogba's definitely been freed up by Matic's arrival. And it was interesting, like, Matic was, like, just imperative to Chelsea in 2013-14, which he was the main reason as to why we lost 6-0, because he just kept on pressing our midfielders, dishing it off to the, Eto'o and Salah and those kind of outside players. Hazard just absolutely eclipsed us. But then he just he didn't really perform much. I think maybe it was to do with Mourinho, his downfall correlated with, Matic's, and maybe it's a thing like Mourinho just gets the best out of Matic. But even though, United, some of their players like Pogba and Lukaku haven't been at their absolute best, I think they've still made a really significant impact, and the whole team seems to be gelling together, and the players really seem to be, doing it for Mourinho. They're really determined to, get that, the Red Devils back up and going. And it's been a good laugh since, 2013 after after Fergie. But I think that banter's just come to an end, unfortunately. But, better Manchester United win it than, Spurs or Chelsea, to be honest. So,
well, as you say, on the comment about them gelling together, I think I saw a stat that was at the Swansea game where it was the first time you'd named an unchanged United lineup in quite a few years, Bojan. So it's good to see sort of a definitive starting 11 sort of taking shape.
That's right, and that was a kind of hallmark of Fergie's reign. We'd just named the same 11 week after week, and everyone knew, like before the team sheet came out, exactly what was going to happen. And if there are any changes, it was not a huge surprise. So that we got some continuity now, which is great, and got some real threats coming off the bench. I mean, Marcus Rashford has started the season really, really well, and he just seems to go from strength to strength. It's crazy in my eyes to think that he's still only 19 years old. He performed really well a couple of days ago for England as well.
Isn't it just such a shame, Bojan, that he doesn't have a manager who can develop youth, if you believe what everyone says?
I know. It was hilarious about 18 months ago when Man City got Pep Guardiola in, and they were talking about Talishi versus Rashford, and they said, Guardiola's trying to develop Nacho and all these other young players, and they've barely been sighted while Rashford goes from strength to strength. And you saw last year that Mourinho had plenty of confidence in him. So, and he's just like, I don't see how you can watch Rashford and not like him. Whenever he gets the ball, he just runs at defenders, takes it inside, and shoots and creates and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, whenever he's got the ball, he's kind of one of those players that makes you like jump off your seat whenever he gets the ball. So yeah, it's great.
His goal wasn't that tremendous, but like he was just not marked at all. Like Leicester just were caught napping, but. Then again, actually, Fellaini's goal wasn't that great either. But I think United definitely deserved the 3 points. Leicester definitely put up a fight, and Shakespeare was, he made his discontent clear at what happened. Like they put up a really good fight. They laid out the game plan. They stuck to it for most of the game, but they just led in those 2 goals. But to be honest, was Matter offside in that in the first half? And
I don't think he was, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to tell without the reverse angle.
And you've got that penalty from Lukaku, which Michael saved, which probably should have been called back. I'm not trying to nitpick, but he moved long before Lukaku struck it. So United definitely were the deserved victors.
It's going to be interesting to see how Leicester goes, because they were sort of suggestions that Shakespeare would be under a bit of pressure for his job, because it was sort of an unusual appointment at the time, and they've really sort of started the season in not the same vein of form as they did the season they won the title, but they're certainly not looking like they'll struggle with relegation as they did last season. But there are a couple of managers already feeling the pinch, and it's pretty remarkable that we're only 3 games in, and there's already talk that De Boer at Palace might lose his job before the next game. And then obviously also Slaven Bilic at West Ham, and even Benitez at Newcastle, who got the win over West Ham, but just frustrated by the lack of transfer funds. I'll start with you, Bojan, and just on the topic of managers under pressure, I guess we'll start with Bilic, but talking about all of them, it's kind of crazy that there are a couple of managers already looking like they might be out of a job soon.
Well, if Slaven Bilic wasn't like a West Ham semi-legend, he would have been sacked last year.
I don't understand how he lasted the summer.
No, not at all. And the way their transfer business was done was just ludicrous. Supposedly they had a deal completely tied up for Iheanacho, and then he decided that he didn't want Iheanacho. This is a bloke that brought in Simone Zaza last year, who absolutely flopped. And if you look through West Ham's striker signings, mate, they go through 3 or 4 a season, and they pretty much all are crap. So I don't know why the Pawn brothers continue to give this guy cash to spend. It's absolutely ludicrous. So yeah, I can't. Well, the thing is, I can see him lasting the season, and then finishing like 16th, 17th. I just don't understand why they would put up with that. They have enough on paper to survive relatively comfortably, but he can't seem to motivate them. When you watch West Ham play against the smarter managers, as soon as the manager changes something, he's got no response. He's only got plan A. It's like watching North Melbourne under Brad Stropp, mate.
Thomas, what's your take been on Bilic? And then I suppose there must be something in the water in London, because De Boer at Crystal Palace is also under pressure.
Yeah, of course. Well, Bilic, I bet he'd love to go back to that 2-0 victory against Arsenal in the opening day.
He had a great season that season. He managed to beat all the top sides.
Maybe it's an Upton Park thing. I don't know. But I don't think there'd be too many fans, West Ham fans, to be loving the Olympic Stadium move thus far.
I reckon there might be a few other supporters groups that are dreading their moves, because I know Everton and obviously Spurs as well.
Well, yeah, Spurs are getting that NFL injection though, so I honestly think Spurs will be fine. Unfortunately, but this season they got the Wembley hoodoo to overcome, but they'll adjust to the pitch size. But yeah, back to Bilic. I don't know, Bojan referenced how ludicrous the transfer window has been, but they have made some decent acquisitions in Hart and Chicharito, and I actually don't know the others.
Arnautovic, probably the other one.
Arnautovic, yeah, missed the obvious one. But yeah, I honestly think if it does get to the stage where they're looking in danger of being relegated, board members will definitely probably just have to pull the plug on Bilic's West Ham tenure. It will have to. I don't think they can afford to go back to the Championship.
No. Do either of you see Benitez walking after the fact that he wasn't able to get the funds he wanted in the window?
He's such a bloody soot, that bloke. He got pretty much a blank. He got pretty much a blank check last year, spent ridiculous sums of money in the Championship, got the side promoted, and then wanted a blank check this year as well. He's brought in some players. He should just suck it up and do his job. I don't see why the bloke's still complaining. He's not managing a top 6 club.
I think they actually pointed out that he's spent similar amounts to teams like Huddersfield and stuff. So it's not as if they've spent nothing, and Huddersfield has spent quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, you remember when they're in the Championship last year, they basically bought a whole bunch of Premier League players, paying them Premier League wages, like Matt Ritchie and Dwight Gale, Diami. Yeah. These are, those are guys on big wages. Don't get me wrong, I'm not Mike Ashley's biggest fan by any means, but if you're an owner and you're already paying, you spent a year paying far and away above everyone else, you got the team promoted. They've got enough in their squad with him, with his ability to stay up. That's their goal this year. They're not pushing for top 6. So you do a couple of years, building the foundation, then you go to the next level. I don't understand why. This could all be a ploy by Benitez to get sacked and get paid out, to be honest. And that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, I probably think that he's asking a bit too much of Newcastle. Traditionally, they're a very well-known club, well-regarded, highly regarded, but I just don't think they have financial constraints which they need to adhere to, and I think he probably is asking too much. What I saw of the West Ham game, they looked quite decent. Matt Ritchie seems to be a gun. I would not mind him to take him on loan at Arsenal just as a trial. He was just ferocious with his pressing. I'd much rather him than El Nene or Coquelin, who's just turned into an absolute imbecile. When he came back from Charlton, he was terrific, and for that rest of the season and onwards into the first half of the 2015-16 campaign. But he's just started to think that he's anything else than a defensive midfielder. He's starting to think he's more of a deep lying playmaker, and he's become just
And
a
he loves a red
liability
card
for
as well.
nine. Gosh, yeah, you guys must love playing against Copland. But yeah, I think Benitez is asking a bit too much financially, and he's got to respect the fact that Newcastle aren't, a Liverpool or a Real Madrid. And if they can make top 10, it will definitely give them more leeway going into next season. I think it's not a one season back in the Premier League job where they can just go, go for broke in the transfer window. I think they've got to build on their form from the Championship, and they showed some very positive signs at the weekend, like 2 weekends ago. So I think Benitez is acting a bit spoiled, but we'll see. I'm no expert on Newcastle.
Well, speaking of clubs in the transfer window, there were a couple of clubs that did pretty well out of the window and a couple of clubs that failed pretty miserably. So we'll talk a bit about the transfer window now, since it wrapped up just a couple of days ago. I guess the first club that comes to mind, in at least terms of deadline day, is Chelsea, and there's been a bit of discussion on the board about the state of their window and a fair bit of snubbing going on with their targets. What do we make of Ross Barkley apparently claiming he didn't actually end up having a medical with them and changing his mind and going back to Everton for 6 months and then wanting to make his move in January? Bojan, what's the story with Chelsea, do you reckon?
Cheers, mate. I mean, I don't think he's fit. I think it's simple as that. I don't think he's fit, and he's probably worked out that it's going to be pretty hard for him to break into that team. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't want to even go to Chelsea because there's too much competition.
So he'll end up at Spurs, you reckon?
Depends whether Spurs are willing to pay the fee. They did just spend 12 million on a 32-year-old striker, so maybe or 15 million 32-year-old striker. So maybe they are willing to pay the fee. It's a new age. It's really hard to tell where he's trying to end up. I really liked him and wanted him a few years ago, but the injuries seem to be catching up with him. He's out with a long-termer now, so there's even questions as to whether he would have passed his medical. So. But yeah, there will be a fight over his services in January purely because someone should be able to pick him up for 20 to 25 million, given he only has 6 months left on his deal.
What do you make of Chelsea's window as a whole then, given the fact that they've kind of struggled to land quite a few of their targets? And do you think they ended up kind of salvaging the window?
Well, I think that they like last season's transfers, they weren't the big blockbuster transfers. Like although they spent a bit of money, like Marcos Alonso.
Yeah.
To be honest, mate, I hadn't heard of him since he was at Bolton as a kid, and it was crap. So then they brought him in for 25 million, and then they win the league, and they're trying to buy Alexandro. You really think Alexandro is going to leave Juventus, who are pretty much semi-finals of Champions League every year, to go to bloody Chelsea? I wouldn't have thought so. And they just spent too long on transfers like that, too long on a bit of transfers. I'm not as convinced on Morata as everyone else is. I mean, the money is really irrelevant for those kind of clubs, for the top 4 clubs. Sorry, Thomas. But so he's paying 70 million. It doesn't really matter whether he can score the goals. I do like the way a lot of Chelsea fans seem to have changed their tune over the last few weeks. Suddenly, Diego Costa's not that good anymore, even though he almost carried them to 2 titles. And then, Morata's his equal or better, despite him, never scoring more than 20 goals in a league season. So Nemanja Matic, same thing. He's not that good. And they brought in Danny Drinkwater instead. Yeah. So it's a bit of a confusing window for them where they didn't.
And of course, Lukaku was never their number one target.
Never. They don't think you're supposed to strengthen while you're on top. Yeah, that's the best time to strengthen. So you can stay well clear of the chasing pack, but they don't seem to have done that. And that's, I'm not quite sure whether that's issues with Emanalo, who's pretty much been hated by every Chelsea manager. He's the director of football. He's been hated by every Chelsea manager. Or whether it's to do with Conte. So, who knows, mate.
Thomas, what's your take on Chelsea's window and some of the other clubs?
Yeah, I heard about what happened with Ross Barkley, and Joey Barton came out and said that apparently Ross Barkley was on the treadmill to do his medical, and he was just going to make sure before he signed the dotted line that his role at Chelsea would be in the central midfield or central attacking midfield. And apparently Conte had his phone turned off. I get the feeling Yeah, and that probably, like, he just got the feeling that that he's probably not. He'd rather just play it safe and go back to Koeman at Everton. I think that there's a fair chance that the players might find Conte quite abrasive. How he treated
after the way he dealt with Costa.
Yeah. That was just awful. I felt like, even though I can't stand Costa, I think he's a whiny little bitch. But it's just the way. Just the way that you just don't treat someone like that. And reading that Daily Mail interview where, like, the guy went to Costa's house and he discussed all his issues, like, I actually felt bad for Costa. It's not a way, like, you want to be treated. They're earning a ridiculous amount of money, but it's like just getting that kind of text message from your boss at work and just saying, we don't want you anymore, just completely, hung out to dry. It's just not fair. So I think there's a fair chance that, Abramovich, and if he doesn't do well this season, Abramovich might start to question how he's handling the dressing room and the morale at the club. He might have to do an investigation into that. We'll see. But I'm, 50-50 about Conte. On field, he seems to be doing very well. Like, he won them the league last season. But I don't know. I've definitely been shocked by the way he's treated some of these players. As for transfers, pretty mediocre window for them. I'm not 100% sure on Alvaro Morata, and I was absolutely baffled by Drinkwater. Like, he's a serviceable midfielder, isn't he? But is he Chelsea standard? Like, am I the only one thinking that it's just ridiculous?
It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Manchester United, I think, getting Lukaku, very good. Matic has turned out into a good transfer, but Man City probably take the chocolates in regard to their business. I don't think UEFA are investigating them anymore. I read on Reddit. I think so. I don't think it's concrete, but there's widespread reports. It's not concrete, of course, until UEFA confirms so. But I don't know why they would just drop it, but we'll see. But against Bournemouth, I think Bernardo Silva and Mendy, like, they showed a few good signs of what they can do, and it's probably, like, they're probably a season or two behind, probably a season behind United. I think they've got all this talent on their squad, but I just think it's going to take a lot of coming together for, even with a master manager such as Pep Guardiola. I think they might need some, like, time to fit in. Maybe it'll only take a few months and then they'll be on their way, but I don't think they're going to come to the fore. They're not going to absolutely blitz the league straight away. I can't see that happening, but yeah.
Well,
I think they'll need a bit of time.
Yeah, speaking of Man City, it's probably a good point to transition into previewing their game this week against Liverpool. As you touched on there, I mean, against Bournemouth, they got out of jail a little bit with Sterling scoring that last-minute winner. Mm-hmm. But they've looked a bit average so far this season, I'd say, in terms of team structure and kind of togetherness. And we talked before about United and how their squad's gelling so well. And it just doesn't seem to be the case over at City at the moment. And I'm sure it'll come at some point this season, but whether it comes this week, I'm not so sure. Bojan, I mean, Liverpool are a great side when it comes to games against other top 4, top 6 teams. Do you see this as a pretty big danger game for Man City?
Well, in terms of dropping points, yeah. I would definitely looking at this game as a high-scoring draw. Do you remember when Liverpool and Newcastle used to play? This is going back like 15 years now, when guys like Stan Collymore were playing for Poole, and they had 2 4-4 draws in the same season. Basically, two teams with crap defences, but were awesome going forward, and just really free-flowing football. I can definitely see this game going that way. Liverpool in the final third look, pretty bloody good, but defensively they're still pretty weak. Man City outside of Arsenal, the top 6 club, probably got the worst central defensive pairing. So they're very weak there, and Walker and Mendy haven't really been tested due to their formation. I can see Walker and Mendy being caught out of position. Moomba was trying to tell me that Kyle Walker was right to playing on the right wing for England, and that it was Rashford's fault. And that, for that first goal, and Rashford should have tracked back to right back and let Walker go forward, because that's the way fullbacks play now. But no, that's the way Pep Guardiola plays now. And when you do get caught out, that's what happens. You can see goals. So I can see a very high-scoring draw in this game.
Thomas, what do you make of it, and how do you see Liverpool stacking up against Man City?
I cannot wait to watch this. Is it on SBS? Like, you're in Australia, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not too sure if it's on SBS, actually.
Sky Sports 1, mate.
Yeah.
Sky Sports 1.
Yeah, if it's the early match, I'll be absolutely buzzing. But I cannot wait for this. It's gonna be a cracker. Liverpool in 2015 November. I think Klopp was a manager then. They won 4-1 at Etihad. So I think that they can take that, precedent with confidence. But I think we know what Liverpool are going to do. They're probably going to try and press the City midfielders, maybe sit back a bit, but try and just hit them on the counter. It's probably Mane and Salah and Firmino. I think they're going to cause a few problems. Like Mendy and Walker, both brilliant fullbacks, but there might just be an issue there with gelling together. We'll see. It's definitely an intriguing contest, but I'd put Liverpool as the favourites at the moment. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if City turn it on.
Yeah, just to jump in, you're right. It is the early game, 9 p.m. on SBS this Saturday night. So watching it in glorious HD with no delay will be brilliant to watch this game. Yeah, it'll be a great way to get back into the action because international breaks really come to a bit. I feel like they come too early in the season. You're just sort of settling in 3 games in, and all of a sudden get this big interruption. And I think there's another one in a couple.
There's another one in a month.
Yeah,
in early October.
So that's
but then after that, I don't think there's another one till March. So
yeah.
But
So,
it's always frustrating at the start of the season when you're looking forward to it and there's just 2 classes
really
of international race.
Yeah. The other game to look forward to is the clash between Everton and Spurs. I think it's Everton at home, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Will be another pretty interesting game because I think Everton have a half-decent record against Spurs at home, but both sides will be looking to pick up points in this one, I would think. I'll start with you, Thomas, on this one. I mean, it's going to be a pretty interesting game between a side like Everton, who are sort of trying to break into that top tier, haven't really looked too convincing so far, and then the Spurs side, who are also sort of stuttering with their form.
Yeah, Harry Kane. I think he's gonna score a brace, or maybe even he's gonna cause them a lot of problems because of that August thing. Yeah, I'd be watching out for Harry Kane. I'd have him as my captain in fantasy. But yeah, we'll see. Like Spurs are probably going to do a lot of their damage away from home before they get used to Wembley. I feel. I wouldn't put it past Spurs to take it to Everton at Goodison. I'm not sure of the pitch dimensions. Maybe there's a chance it's a similar length and width pitch to the old White Hart Lane. We'll see, but I think Tottenham will definitely show something to Everton. We'll see.
What do you make of Everton's start to the season? I mean, they've brought in quite a few decent, high caliber players, but I guess they're another side who are sort of still finding their touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Rooney came back, and that was a really good moment for him scoring in his first game back and scoring away at City. And those 2 supporters from a few years back, like they just hadn't changed seats. That was quite hilarious. To be honest, I've been very busy with uni recently. I've only been watching a few of the games, but I haven't really noticed a lot about Everton. Koeman, how's the consensus on Koeman?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. There's a few Everton fans on the board who are getting pretty frustrated with him already. Bradesman and Aussie, I think, might both be getting a bit frustrated at the fact that they weren't able to bring a proper target man in, because it seemed quite logical to me if you're going to go out and get Sigurdsson that you'd bring in. I mean, I know they've sort of targeted Giroud, and that would have been a great signing for them, to have that sort of tall striker who. We know that Sigurdsson has great set pieces, but they don't really seem to have anyone to get on the end of them. Bojan, what have you made of their summer business, and then how they've started the season, and how will they go against Spurs?
Well, I mean, Giroud would have been the perfect signing for them. I mean, you could argue that Llorente would have been good, having Sigurdsson there, but Llorente stores a majority of his goals from crosses, so less. And the way Everton played, at least last year with Lukaku, it was more ball played on the ground and trying to quick counter-attack, attacking football. That they are playing a lot narrower than I thought they would. They didn't get any other pacey wingers in. And yeah, it all seems like they're getting by on talent at the moment, as opposed to listening to Koeman or playing in a tactical way to kind of, I just maximise their potential. So Coman, he'll be in the hot seat if they don't make top 6. I think. I mean, they've got new owners come in. I know that's not Lukaku, but they have spent a lot of money, more money than Everton normally would. And yeah, they're going to need to. They're going to need to. Well, the ownership there will be looking for constant improvement, and if he can't bring that, he'll be shown the door.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a bit of pressure on quite a few managers early in the season,
also,
I think. Yeah.
I'd say Spurs win this very comfortably. I'd say 3-1.
Yeah,
and Harry Kane.
I think Harry Kane definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. What's the fact that he
September.
scores for England as soon as it's September. He's going to score for Spurs now that we're out of August as well, just like clockwork.
Britain
But
stars. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on, guys,
No worries. Thanks
mate.
for having me.
and thanks everyone for listening in. Hopefully your side gets the win, and we'll see you on the forum.